The mining colony of Hanul Station floated quietly in the vast emptiness of space. It was not a glamorous place, but it was home to a group of settlers who had left Earth decades ago in search of new opportunities. The station was small and outdated, its walls patched together with scrap metal and determination. Despite its humble appearance, it served as a lifeline for those living on the edge of known space. Among these settlers were Jae Min, a clever engineer with a knack for fixing anything mechanical, and Yoon Hee, a calm and skilled medic whose quiet strength often went unnoticed. Jae Min spent most of his days tinkering with the station's aging equipment. He had grown up surrounded by machines and understood them better than people. His hands moved quickly and confidently as he worked on one of the communication arrays that morning. The array was old, prone to breaking down at the worst possible times, but Jae-min saw it as a challenge rather than a problem. As he adjusted wires and tightened connections, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in keeping the station running. Yoon-hee, meanwhile, was checking supplies in the medical bay. She always kept everything meticulously organized, knowing that in an emergency, even seconds could make a difference. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her sharp eyes scanned the shelves methodically. Though she rarely spoke about it, Yoon-hee carried a deep sense of responsibility for the well-being of everyone on the station. She knew how fragile life could be out here, so far from Earth and proper medical facilities. As Jae-min worked, something unusual caught his attention. A faint signal crackled through the speakers of the communication array. At first, he thought it was just static, but then he heard it. A voice. It was garbled and distorted, barely recognizable as human, but there was no mistaking the desperation in its tone. "Help. Please. They're coming." The message repeated over and over like a broken record. Jae-min froze, his heart pounding. Who could be sending this? And where were they? He immediately called for Yoon-hee, who arrived within minutes. Together they listened to the message again and again, trying to piece together fragments of information. The sender mentioned something called the Harbingers, though what exactly that meant was unclear. The signal seemed to come from somewhere deep in the void, beyond any mapped star systems. It was impossible to tell if the sender was still alive, or if the message had been drifting through space for years. Soo-hyun, the leader of Hanul Station, joined them shortly after. She was a practical woman, always focused on the safety and survival of her people. When Jae-min explained what they had found, Soo-hyun frowned deeply. Responding to the distress call would mean venturing into unknown territory, risking their already precarious situation. But ignoring it felt wrong, almost cruel. After some deliberation, she agreed to let Jae-min and Yoon-hee try to send a response. They didn't have much, just patched together tech and hope, but they did their best. For hours, they broadcasted their reply into the void, unsure if anyone would hear it. Exhaustion began to set in, and doubt crept into their minds. Maybe the signal had been nothing more than a glitch, or perhaps the sender was long gone. Just as they were about to give up, something extraordinary happened. A massive fleet emerged from hyperspace near the station. Dozens of ships filled the sky, each one larger and more intimidating than the last. Their hulls gleamed menacingly, under the light of nearby stars covered in strange markings that seemed to pulse with energy. Panic spread quickly among the settlers. These weren't rescuers. They were the Deathworlders, warriors infamous across the galaxy for their brutal efficiency and terrifying reputation. Stories about them were whispered in fear around campfires and dinner tables. Some said they were merciless conquerors, while others claimed they fought against ancient evils lurking in the shadows of space. Whatever the truth was, one thing was certain: encountering them was never good news. A shuttle descended from one of the larger ships, landing softly on the station's docking platform. Everyone gathered nervously, unsure of what to expect. When the hatch opened, a towering figure stepped out. His name was Kyung-soo, and he looked every bit the part of a Deathworlder warrior. Clad in battle-worn armor etched with cryptic runes, he radiated authority and danger. His piercing gaze swept across the crowd before settling on Jae-min and Yoon-hee. To everyone's surprise, Kyung-soo didn't attack. Instead, he demanded answers about the SOS signal. Through tense negotiations, Facilitated by Su-hyun, Jaemin explained what they had heard. Kyung-soo revealed that his people had also been tracking the same distress call, which originated not from humans, but from a mysterious alien artifact drifting through space. This artifact, he claimed, was linked to the Harbingers, an ancient enemy capable of wiping out entire civilizations. Though skeptical, the colonists agreed to assist the Deathworlders in locating the artifact. Ignoring the call might doom whoever, or whatever, had sent it, and refusing to cooperate with the Deathworlders wasn't an option either. With little time to prepare, Jae-min and Yoon-hee found themselves thrust into a mission that would take them far beyond the safety of Hanul Station. As they boarded one of the Deathworlder ships, Yoon-hee couldn't shake the feeling that this decision would change everything, for better or worse. The sight of the Deathworlder fleet looming above the station stayed with Jaemin as they departed. He glanced at Yoon-hee, who stood silently beside him, her expression unreadable. For all their differences, they shared a common goal now: survival. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer alone in the vastness of space. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. The Deathworlder ship was unlike anything Jae-min or Yoon-hee had ever seen. Its interior was a maze of dimly lit corridors, metallic walls etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly as if alive. The air carried a strange metallic tang, and the hum of unseen machinery vibrated through the floor beneath their feet. Though the colonists from Hanul Station were technically guests, they felt more like prisoners. Armed guards escorted them at all times, their weapons glinting ominously in the low light. Jae-min tried to focus on the task ahead, but his mind kept drifting back to the events that led them here. He couldn't shake the image of Kyung-soo, the towering Deathworlder leader who had demanded answers about the SOS signal. There was something unsettling about him, his piercing gaze, his commanding presence, but also an undeniable sense of purpose. Jaemin wondered what kind of man could lead such a fearsome fleet. Was he truly as ruthless as the story suggested? Yoon-hee, meanwhile, observed everything with quiet intensity. She noticed how the Deathworlders moved with precision, their every action deliberate and efficient. They weren't just soldiers. They were survivors, hardened by countless battles. Despite their intimidating demeanor, she sensed a deeper layer to them, a shared burden that weighed heavily on each member of the crew. It made her curious, though she dared not ask too many questions. Their journey into uncharted space began almost immediately. The massive fleet formed a protective formation around the smaller vessel, carrying Jae-min, Yoon-hee, and a handful of other settlers. Among the Deathworlders assigned to assist them were Yoon-ji, a sharp-tongued pilot with a knack for sarcasm, and Min-seok, a stoic tactician whose expression rarely changed. Both seemed skeptical of the humans' ability to contribute, but they followed orders without complaint. Yoon-ji took particular interest in Jae-min, often teasing him about his fascination with the ship's technology. "You think you can fix this?" she asked one day, gesturing to the control panel in front of her. "Go ahead, try, but don't blame me if it explodes." Jae-min chuckled nervously, unsure whether she was joking or serious. Still, he appreciated her attempts to lighten the mood. Her humor, however biting, was a welcome distraction from the tension aboard the ship. Min-seok, on the other hand, was far less approachable. He spoke only when necessary, his words clipped and direct. Yet there was no denying his competence. When the navigation systems encountered unexpected interference, he quickly identified the problem and devised a solution. Yoon-hee found herself watching him closely, intrigued by his methodical nature. Though they barely exchanged words, she felt a grudging respect growing between them. As the days passed, strange phenomena began to occur. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation, and eerie whispers echoed through empty corridors. At first, the settlers dismissed these incidents as tricks of the mind, brought on by stress and fatigue. But when a guard reported seeing shadowy figures moving just outside his line of sight, unease spread among the crew. Even the Deathworlders seemed troubled, though they did their best to hide it. One evening, Yoon-ji sought out Jae-min in the makeshift workshop where he spent most of his time. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, her usual smirk replaced by a rare seriousness. "You should know," she said quietly. "This isn't normal. Not even for us." "What do you mean?" Jamin asked, setting down the tool he'd been using. "We've been tracking this artifact for a while now," Yunji explained. "It's dangerous, not just because of what it might contain, but because of where it is. This part of space, it's unstable. Reality bends and twists. Out here, that's why we call it Harbinger territory." Jamin frowned. "Harbinger territory?" Yunji nodded. "The Harbingers, they're not just some ancient enemy. They're something else, something older. And wherever they go, chaos follows. We're getting close to their domain now. Things are going to get worse before they get better." Her words sent a chill down Jamin's spine. He wanted to ask more, but before he could, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Everyone rushed to their stations, hearts pounding. On the main view screen, a distant object came into view, a pulsating sphere of light floating silently amidst a field of debris. It was the artifact they had been searching for. Kyung-soo addressed the crew, his voice steady and commanding. "This is it," he said. "The source of the distress call. Prepare yourselves. Whatever happens next, remember your training." The closer they got to the artifact, the stranger things became. The ship's systems began to fail sporadically, forcing Min-seok and Jae-min to work together to keep everything operational. Yoon-hee stayed close to the medical bay, ready to treat anyone injured during the increasingly frequent malfunctions. Even Eunji, usually so confident, seemed uneasy as she piloted the ship toward the mysterious object. When they finally reached the artifact, the entire crew gathered in the observation deck to witness it up close. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, its surface shimmering with colors that defied description. Strange symbols spiraled across its exterior, shifting and rearranging themselves as if alive. A faint hum emanated from it, resonating deep within their chests. Despite warnings from Min-seok not to touch it, curiosity got the better of Jae-min. As he approached the artifact, drawn inexplicably to its mesmerizing glow, he noticed a small indentation on its surface. Without thinking, he pressed his hand against it. Instantly, the artifact reacted, unleashing a wave of energy that engulfed the ship. Alarms screamed as the lights flickered wildly, and everyone stumbled to maintain their footing. Before anyone could react, the world around them shifted. The familiar confines of the ship dissolved into a swirling void of darkness and light. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, taking on grotesque shapes that twisted and writhed unnaturally. Panic set in as the realization dawned. They were no longer in normal space. They had entered the realm of the Harbingers. Kyung-soo barked orders, trying to regain control of the situation, but it was clear they were outmatched. The Harbingers, whatever they were closing in. Jamin clutched the wall for support, his mind racing. What had he done? Had his curiosity doomed them all? Beside him, Yoon-hee stood firm, her eyes scanning the chaos for any sign of hope. "We need to stay calm," she said, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "If we panic, we're finished." Her words grounded Jae-min, pulling him back from the edge of despair. Together they turned to face whatever horrors awaited them in this nightmarish dimension. For now, survival was their only goal, and it would take every ounce of courage and ingenuity they possessed to make it out alive. The Harbinger realm was unlike anything Jae-min, Yoon-hee, or anyone else aboard the Deathworlder ship had ever experienced. It wasn't just a place. It felt alive, as if the very fabric of reality was shifting and writhing around them. The air crackled with energy, and shadows loomed in every direction, taking on monstrous forms that seemed to mock their fear. Strange noises echoed through the void, low growls, high-pitched screeches, and haunting whispers that burrowed into their minds. Kyung-soo wasted no time issuing orders. "Form defensive positions," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. The Deathworlders sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. They formed a tight circle, weapons drawn, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Jae-min and Yoon-hee stood near the center of the group, unsure of what to do but determined to help however they could. The first attack came without warning. Shadowy creatures erupted from the swirling void, their forms fluid and ever-changing. One moment they were humanoid, their elongated limbs reaching out like claws. The next, they dissolved into pools of black smoke before reforming into something even more grotesque. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and their mouths stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The Deathworlders opened fire immediately, their plasma weapons lighting up the darkness with bursts of searing energy. Each shot tore through the creatures, causing them to shriek in agony as their forms disintegrated. But for every one they destroyed, two more appeared, emerging from the shadows like a never-ending tide. Panic began to creep into the hearts of the settlers, who had never faced anything like this before. Jamin grabbed a fallen weapon from the floor, his hands trembling as he aimed at the nearest creature. His first shot missed wildly, but the second struck true, sending the monster reeling backward. Beside him, Yun-Hee worked quickly to treat a wounded settler whose arm had been slashed by one of the Harbinger's claws. Her movements were calm and efficient, her focus unshaken despite the terror surrounding them. Yun-Ji shouted over the din, "Keep moving! We can't stay in one spot!" She darted between the fighters, her agility allowing her to dodge attacks with ease. Her sharp tongue lashed out as she fired her weapon, taunting the creatures as if trying to provoke them. "Is that all you've got? Come on! I've seen scarier things in my sleep!" Min-Seok remained silent, his expression unreadable as he coordinated the defense. He directed the team's movements with short, clipped commands, ensuring they all stayed together and didn't get overwhelmed. When a particularly large Harbinger lunged toward Jae-min, Min-Seok stepped in front of him, raising his weapon and firing point blank. The creature exploded into a cloud of ash, leaving behind only a faint smell of burnt metal. Despite their best efforts, the battle seemed hopeless. The Harbingers kept coming, relentless and unstoppable. Just when it felt like they might be overrun, Kyung-Soo activated a device strapped to his wrist, a small orb that emitted a blinding pulse of light. The creatures recoiled, their forms flickering and distorting as if the light burned them. "Move!" Kyung-Soo ordered, seizing the opportunity to lead the group deeper into the void. They ran as fast as they could, their footsteps echoing in the strange, shifting landscape. The ground beneath them felt unstable, as though it might collapse at any moment. Shadows continued to pursue them, but the distance created by the pulse gave them precious time to regroup. Eventually, they reached a clearing where the artifact floated ominously in the center. Its surface pulsed with an eerie glow, casting long, distorted shadows across the area. Jamin stared at it, his mind racing. This thing had brought them here. It was the key to everything. If they could understand it, maybe they could find a way out. Kyung-Soo turned to the group, his voice low but firm. "We need to figure out what this is. Now!" He gestured to Min-Seok and Yun-Ji, who approached the artifact cautiously. As they examined it, Jamin noticed something strange, a series of symbols etched into its surface that resembled the ones he'd seen earlier. Only now, they seemed to be moving, shifting into new patterns as if communicating. I think I can read this," Jamin said hesitantly, stepping closer. He placed his hand on the artifact again, ignoring the startled looks from the others. This time, instead of unleashing another wave of energy, the artifact responded differently. Images flashed in his mind, visions of ancient battles, civilizations being wiped out, and a dark force spreading across the stars. He saw the Harbingers not as mere monsters, but as servants of something far worse, a being of pure destruction that existed beyond comprehension. Yun-Hee grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "What did you see?" she asked urgently. "It's a prison," Jamin replied, his voice shaky. "This artifact, it's holding something inside. Something terrible." Min-Seok frowned, his brow furrowing. "If we destroy it, we risk releasing whatever's trapped inside. But leaving it here isn't an option either." Kyung-Soo nodded grimly. "Then we have to find another way. There has to be a mechanism to seal it properly." Before they could discuss further, the Harbingers returned in greater numbers than before. Dozens of them swarmed the clearing, their forms merging and splitting like liquid darkness. The group prepared for another fight, but this time they were outnumbered and exhausted. Plasma bolts flew through the air, striking the creatures with diminishing effect. The settlers huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Yun-Ji cursed under her breath as she reloaded her weapon. At this rate, we're not making it out alive. But then, an idea sparked in Jae-min's mind. Wait, he shouted. What if we use the artifact against them? Maybe we can trap them back inside. Min-seok considered this, his eyes narrowing. It's risky. If we fail, we'll make things worse. We don't have a choice, Jae-min insisted. It's our only shot. Kyung-soo hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Do it. But someone will need to stay behind to activate the containment sequence. A heavy silence fell over the group. Everyone knew what that meant, a suicide mission. No one spoke as they exchanged uneasy glances, each silently grappling with the weight of the decision. Finally, Eun-ji stepped forward. I'll do it, she said firmly, her usual sarcasm replaced by steely determination. I'm the best pilot here. If anyone can deliver the charge, it's me. No, Kyung-soo said sharply. You're needed elsewhere. But Eun-ji shook her head. With respect, sir, this is my call. Let me do this, for all of us. Her words hung in the air, heavy with finality. After a long pause, Kyung-soo relented with a curt nod. Very well. Make it count. Eun-ji saluted mockingly, a ghost of her old smirk returning. Always do. With that, she climbed into a nearby shuttle, programming it to deliver the explosive charge directly into the artifact's core. As the engines roared to life, she glanced back at the group one last time, her expression softening briefly before the shuttle launched into the swirling void. The explosion was massive, engulfing the artifact in a brilliant burst of light. The Harbingers screamed as the energy consumed them, dragging them back into the prison from which they had escaped. For a moment, it seemed like the nightmare was over, but the victory came at a cost. As the survivors regrouped, the absence of Eun-ji weighed heavily on everyone. Jae-min clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. He had suggested using the artifact, and now someone had paid the ultimate price for it. Kyung-soo broke the silence, his voice gruff but tinged with respect. She gave us a chance. Don't waste it. Yoon-hee placed a comforting hand on Jae-min's shoulder. We'll honor her sacrifice, she said softly. That's all we can do. As they prepared to leave the Harbinger realm, the artifact collapsed in on itself, vanishing entirely. The void began to dissolve, and the familiar sight of stars reappeared in the distance. Though battered and bruised, the group had survived, but they knew the fight was far from over. Somewhere out there, the true enemy still waited, an ancient force that even the Deathworlders feared. For now, though, they allowed themselves a moment of relief. Together, they limped back toward the fleet, carrying with them the memory of Eun-ji's bravery and the knowledge that survival often demanded unthinkable sacrifices. The survivors returned to the Deathworlder flagship battered, exhausted, and haunted by what they had witnessed in the Harbinger realm. The artifact was gone, destroyed along with Eun-ji's shuttle, but the cost of their escape weighed heavily on everyone. For Jae-min, the guilt of suggesting the plan that led to her sacrifice gnawed at him like a relentless shadow. He replayed the moment in his mind over and over, her smirk as she climbed into the shuttle, her final words before launching into the void. Try as he might, he couldn't shake the feeling that it should have been him instead. Yoon-hee noticed his distress and tried to comfort him whenever she could. You did what you thought was right, she said gently one evening as they sat together in the ship's makeshift common area. Eun-ji knew the risks. She chose to do this because she believed in the mission. I know, Jae-min replied, quietly, staring at the floor. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Yoon-hee didn't push him further. Instead, she simply stayed by his side, offering silent support. Her presence was a small comfort in the wake of so much loss. Meanwhile, Kyung-soo called an emergency meeting with the remaining crew and settlers. The atmosphere in the briefing room was tense, the air thick with unspoken fears and lingering questions. Min-seok stood beside Kyung-soo, his usual stoic expression masking whatever emotions he might have felt about Eun-ji's death. Even he seemed slightly more subdued than usual. The artifact is destroyed, Kyung-soo began, his deep voice cutting through the silence. But we cannot celebrate yet. What we faced in that realm was only a fraction of the Harbinger's power. Their master, the entity they serve, is still out there. And if it learns of our interference, it will come for us. A murmur rippled through the group. The settlers exchanged uneasy glances, while the Deathworlders remained grimly focused. Jamin leaned forward, his curiosity outweighing his exhaustion. "What exactly are we dealing with?" he asked. "You keep talking about this entity. What is it?" Kyung-Soo hesitated, as though choosing his words carefully. "It is ancient beyond measure," he finally said. "Older than stars, older than galaxies. It consumes civilizations, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. The Harbingers are merely its servants, sent to prepare the way for its arrival. We call it the Devourer." "The Devourer?" Yoon-hee repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "And you've fought it before?" "We have survived it," Kyung-Soo corrected. "Survived and learned." The artifact was one of many prisons created eons ago by those who sought to delay its return. Each prison holds a fragment of its essence, keeping it contained across dimensions. But these prisons are failing. If even one more falls... He let the sentence hang unfinished, but the implication was clear. Everyone understood the stakes now. Destroying the artifact had stopped the immediate threat, but it had also weakened the barrier holding back something far worse. Min-seok stepped forward, taking over the briefing. "We need to act quickly. There may be other artifacts still, intact, scattered throughout the galaxy. Finding them and reinforcing them must be our priority. Otherwise, the Devourer will break free completely." "But how do we find them?" Jamin asked. "They're not exactly marked on any map." "They leave traces," Min-seok explained. "Disturbances in space-time, anomalies that can be detected with the right equipment. Our scanners picked up faint signals before we reached the first artifact. With some adjustments, we can track others." The plan was risky, but it was all they had. The Deathworlders immediately set to work modifying their sensors, while Jae-min and Yoon-hee assisted wherever they could. Though neither of them were experts in advanced technology, their determination made up for their lack of experience. Jae-min tinkered tirelessly with the scanning arrays, his hands moving with practiced precision despite his fatigue. Yoon-hee helped organize supplies and tended to the wounded, ensuring everyone stayed as strong and healthy as possible under the circumstances. As the days passed, the fleet moved cautiously through uncharted space, following the faint trails left behind by the artifacts. The journey was fraught with tension. Every jump into hyperspace brought the possibility of encountering more Harbingers or worse, signs of the Devourer itself. Sleep became a luxury few could afford, and even then, nightmares plagued those who managed to rest. One night, during a rare moment of calm, Jamin found himself alone in the observation deck. He stared out at the endless expanse of stars there, light a stark contrast to the darkness that threatened to consume everything. His thoughts drifted to Hanoel Station, to the simple life he had once known before all of this began. Would he ever see it again? Or would the galaxy fall to ruin? Before they could stop the Devourer? Thinking about home? Jamin turned to see Yoon-hee standing in the doorway, her arms crossed against the chill of the room. She walked over and joined him, leaning against the railing as she gazed at the stars. "I was thinking about how much has changed," he admitted. "Back on the station, I thought my biggest problem was fixing broken machines. Now," he trailed off, shaking his head. "Now you're saving the galaxy," Yoon-hee finished with a faint smile. "Not bad for a mechanic, huh?" Jamin chuckled weakly. "I wouldn't say saving, more like delaying the end." "Maybe," Yoon-hee said softly. "But every delay matters. Every second gives someone else a chance to live, to fight another day. That's worth something." Her words gave him a small measure of comfort, though the weight of their mission still pressed down on him. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars streak past as the ship continued its journey. Eventually, the scanners picked up another signal, a stronger one this time. Hope surged among the crew as they adjusted course, heading toward the source. When they arrived, they discovered another artifact floating in the void, similar to the first but larger and more intricate. Its surface shimmered with an ethereal glow, and the same shifting symbols covered its exterior. "This is it," Min-seok said, his tone urgent. "We need to reinforce it before it fails like the last one." Working quickly, the team deployed drones to analyze the artifact's structure. Jamin studied the data alongside the Deathworlders, trying to decipher the patterns etched into its surface. Unlike the previous artifact, this one seemed designed not just to imprison, but to actively resist intrusion. Reinforcing it would require careful precision, or risk triggering another catastrophic release. As they worked, strange phenomena began to occur again. Equipment malfunctioned, and crew members reported hearing whispers in empty corridors. Shadows flickered at the edges of vision, growing darker and more menacing with each passing hour. It was clear the Harbingers were aware of their presence and closing in fast. "We don't have much time," Kyung-soo warned, his voice tight with urgency. "Get it done, or we're all dead." With renewed determination, the team redoubled their efforts. Jamin and Yoon-hee worked side by side, their combined skills proving invaluable. Slowly but surely, they stabilized the artifact's containment field, strengthening it against future breaches. But as they neared completion, the ship rocked violently, throwing everyone off balance. "They're here!" someone shouted. The Harbingers attacked with ferocity, swarming the ship in overwhelming numbers. Plasma bolts lit up the corridors as the Deathworlders fought desperately to hold them back. Jamin and Yoon-hee scrambled to finish their task, their hands trembling, as they input the final commands. Behind them, Kyung-soo and Min-seok held the line, their weapons blazing as they fended off wave after wave of enemies. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the artifact's systems came online. A surge of energy pulsed outward, enveloping the ship, in a protective barrier that repelled the Harbingers. One by one, the creatures dissolved into nothingness, their forms collapsing under the renewed strength of the prison. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers erupted from the crew, relief washing over them like a tidal wave. They had succeeded, but at great cost. The ship was damaged, resources were depleted, and the toll on their bodies and minds was evident in every weary face. Yet amidst the celebration, Jamin couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. This victory was temporary, a single step in a much larger battle. The Devourer was still out there, waiting, and sooner or later they would have to face it directly. The victory felt hollow. Though the second artifact had been reinforced and the Harbingers driven back, the sense of impending doom lingered like a storm cloud overhead. The crew aboard the Deathworlder flagship worked tirelessly to repair the damage inflicted during the battle, but exhaustion was etched into every face. Jamin and Yoon-hee moved through the ship almost mechanically, their bodies weary but their minds racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. Kyung-soo called another meeting in the briefing room, his expression grimmer than ever. "We've bought ourselves some time," he began, addressing the group, "but this is far from over. The Devourer knows we're here now. It will send more Harbingers, stronger ones, and eventually, it may come itself." A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. If they failed, there would be no one left to stand against the Devourer's hunger. Min-seok stepped forward, holding up a holographic map projected from his wrist device. "Our scans have detected faint traces of other artifacts," he explained. "They're scattered across vast distances, each one growing weaker by the day. We need to reach them before they collapse entirely." "But—" he hesitated, glancing at Kyung-soo. "But?" Jamin prompted, dread pooling in his stomach. "But reinforcing them isn't enough," Min-seok continued. "The containment fields are failing because the prisons themselves are incomplete. To truly seal the Devourer away, we need to activate a fail-safe mechanism within each artifact, a final protocol that locks them permanently." "And how do we do that?" Yoon-hee asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "It requires someone to stay behind," Kyung-soo said bluntly. "Someone must enter the artifact's core and manually trigger the sequence. Once activated, there's no way out." The weight of his words settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. A suicide mission. Again. Yoonji's sacrifice was still fresh in everyone's minds, and the thought of repeating such a loss was unbearable. Yet no one spoke against it. They all knew what was at stake. Jamin clenched his fists, anger and guilt swirling inside him. He had already cost one. He couldn't bear the thought of losing another. Before anyone else could volunteer, he stood up. "I'll do it," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. No, Yoon-hee exclaimed, turning to him with wide eyes. You can't! I'm the one who started this, Jaemin interrupted, his tone resolute. If anyone should pay the price, it's me. Kyung-soo studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Your courage is commendable, he said. But this decision isn't yours alone. We'll discuss it further once we reach the next artifact. Days later, the fleet arrived at the location of the third prison. This artifact was even larger than the previous one, its surface pulsating with ominous energy. The closer they got, the more unstable the environment became. Equipment malfunctioned constantly, and eerie whispers filled the corridors, driving some crew members to the brink of madness. It was clear, time was running out. As preparations began, Yoon-hee cornered Jaemin in the workshop where he was tinkering with tools. You can't keep doing this, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Sacrificing yourself won't fix anything. It's not about fixing anything, Jaemin replied softly. It's about doing what needs to be done. I caused this mess. I have to make it right. You didn't cause it, Yoon-hee snapped, her composure cracking. None of us did. This is bigger than us, bigger than anyone. You think dying will absolve you? It won't. It'll just leave. The rest of us without you. Her words struck a chord deep within him, but determination outweighed doubt. He placed a hand on her shoulder, forcing himself to smile. Then promise me something, he said. Promise me you'll keep going. No matter what happens, don't give up. Yoon-hee opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Instead, she nodded silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. When the team reached the artifact, they found its core chamber guarded by an army of harbingers. The creatures attacked ferociously, their forms shifting and distorting as they closed in. The Deathworlders fought valiantly, their weapons blazing as they carved a path toward the entrance. Jaemin and Yoon-hee followed closely behind, dodging attacks and helping wherever they could. Finally, they breached the chamber. Inside, the core glowed with an intense light, humming with power. Jaemin approached it, his heart pounding. This is it, he said, turning to the others. Get ready to retreat once I activate it. No, Yoon-hee said suddenly, stepping forward. Let me do it. What? Jaemin stared at her, shock written across his face. Are you insane? I'm a medic, she said calmly, though her hands trembled slightly. My job is to save lives. If staying here means saving yours and everyone else's, then that's what I have to do. Absolutely not, Jaemin shot back. I made my decision. You can't. I'm making mine, Yoon-hee interrupted, her voice firm. You're needed out there, Jaemin. You always find a way to fix things. Let me handle this. For a moment, they locked eyes, neither willing to back down. Then, reluctantly, Jaemin nodded. Fine, he whispered. But thank you. Yoon-hee smiled sadly. Take care of yourself, okay? With that, she turned and entered the core chamber, sealing the door behind her. Through the thick glass, Jaemin watched as she input the final commands, her movements steady despite the chaos outside. The core began to glow brighter, its energy building to a crescendo. Fall back, Kyung-soo shouted, ushering the team toward the exit. Jaemin hesitated, his gaze fixed on Yoon-hee until the last possible second. Then, with a heavy heart, he turned and ran. Behind them, the artifact erupted in a blinding flash of light, engulfing the harbingers and sealing the prison once more. The survivors escaped just in time, watching from the safety of the ship as the artifact stabilized, its glow fading into darkness. Silence filled the vessel as the reality of Yoon-hee's sacrifice sank in. Jaemin sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. His mind replayed her final moments, the determination in her eyes, the quiet strength in her voice. She had given everything to ensure their survival, and he vowed never to forget her. Kyung-soo approached him later, placing a hand on his shoulder. She saved us all, he said simply. And she trusted you to carry the torch. Jaemin nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I won't let her down. Though grief threatened to consume him, Jaemin found solace in the knowledge that their fight wasn't over. There were still artifacts to protect, battles to win, and lives to save. With Yoon-hee's memory guiding him, he resolved to see it through to honor her sacrifice by ensuring that the galaxy would endure. As the fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the artifact behind, Jae-min allowed himself a small smile. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They had each other, and together, they would face whatever came next.